All right, so Eric, it wasn't all rainbows for WCW. We know that the NWO was certainly the biggest lift in the history of WCW, and Goldberg, man, he carved a niche out, and obviously DDP and all of that. But when we go back, I think we can all agree that WCW never turned a profit without Nitro. But Nitro was still trying to find an identity before we really established what I think most fans would settle in to become accustomed with, the NWO or the WCW formula. Like for so many years on Monday Night Raw, we knew that Triple H or somebody is going to come out and cut a 20-minute promo, and then we're going to get a match made for tonight and blah, blah, blah. It sort of became paint by numbers. On the WCW side of things, we would usually see a lot of cruiserweights in the first hour and set the table for some stories, maybe an A story and a B story, and maybe even a C story throughout the rest of the night. But when you're first starting Nitro, those early growing pains, man, it's not all a home run. You know, we're going to take a look back at 30 years ago this week, and we've got our usual 3-man announce booth. Alex Wright picks a win up over Disco Inferno. It's a short opening match. Then we've got a taped interview with Hulk Hogan and Jimmy Hart. And Hogan is really trying here as we're getting ready to build towards Halloween Havoc 95. And he's talking about this nameless giant, because we haven't yet named him, as the big, mean, nasty, stinky giant. Then we see Mean Gene Okerlund interview Lex Luger and Randy Savage, and they're replaying their confrontation from the prior week. And Luger is really one of the more nuanced characters in wrestling at this point. He's not exactly 100% baby face or 100% heel. He was always a loyal friend to Sting, even when he may have been otherwise an effective heel. What can you tell us about the way Lex Luger was booked in this era, Eric? Because it feels like by 95, there aren't very many shades of gray. We've got good guys versus bad guys, as Vince McMahon would famously mock in 97. But in 95, you're really starting that he's a bad guy, except when he's with Sting. And you're only really doing that with Lex. Why were you willing to take that chance on him? Because that's a chance that a lot of creative types may not have done in wrestling at that point.
Because I was literally watching from week to week a new Lex Luger kind of unfold. That period of time when Lex showed up in September of 95 to 96, 97, it's like every time I saw Lex, I saw a different side of his character that I liked even more. And they were subtle. It wasn't like he didn't do anything drastically different. But his attitude, I mean, across the board, Lex's attitude backstage was completely different. He smiled when he talked to you, and he actually talked to you, not at you. He'd have a conversation as opposed to making a comment to you, right? Everything about Lex changed, and it also changed in the ring. The way he carried himself in interviews changed. I think, looking back, I didn't notice it this way then, but I think he had more confidence. Lex came off more confident, not in his character, what his look, not that. I think he just became more comfortable being Lex and more comfortable in WCW, and maybe felt at home there for the first time. You know, when he first got to WCW, it's like, oh, the grass is greener, WWF. You're not really a big star till you make it to the WWF. We got the WWF, and it wasn't a greener pasture for him. It is for many, but it wasn't for him. And I think coming back to WCW probably felt more comfortable, and as he got more comfortable, he got more confident. I don't know what it was, not a shrink, but all I know is every Monday I would show up and I'd see Lex work, and I'd have more fun than I had watching him the week before. So it was kind of, let's see where this goes. Let's see what this character becomes. Let the character evolve and see what we can tap into, as opposed to the same Lex Luger character that we'd overexposed and WWE overexposed for so long.
Next up on the show, we would see Kurosawa pin Craig Pittman. That was a unique matchup. Mean Gene Okerlund would then interview Brian Pillman and Arn Anderson. Arn is a couple of weeks removed from his singles match on pay-per-view at Fall Brawl, and that was a singles match against the Nature Boy Ric Flair. And now you see Pillman laughing and mocking Flair's woo, and Arn Anderson's laughing at Ric Flair. Of course, we're setting up Flair and Sting to be in a tag match against these guys. And of course, famously, darn it, Ric Flair would turn on Sting again. Speaking of Sting, WCW Saturday Night was promoted for Sting versus Johnny B. Bad for the U.S. heavyweight title. That's unique because at this point, they're both baby faces. But I am curious. I know that you can't help but position Saturday Night, which has previously been your A show, as the B show. How much pressure, if any, was on you from TBS? Because we know Nitro's on TNT. TBS still has Saturday Night. Did everyone in the Turner organization understand, by the very nature of prime time during a weeknight versus Saturday afternoon, TBS has to be the B show now?
Oh yeah, there was no. Jeff Carr was, I think he was a program director at TBS back in the day and was the original kind of liaison between the network and WCW. He was our network executive, as I refer to today. And we'd hear from Jeff every once in a while prior to Nitro. He'd like to let us know that he was, keeping us aware that he's watching our numbers and all that kind of stuff, just doing his job. But once Nitro hit, I never heard from Jeff. Never. I don't think I had one conversation with Jeff Carr after Nitro hit. And everybody, it was by default, just scope of budget. I could shoot a 2-hour episode of WCW Saturday Night for about 120 grand, if that. And Nitro cost about 500,000 at the time, or 450. So just by virtue of the budget for it, it became the number one show.
Next up on the show, we would see Randy Savage in there with the Zodiac, and then eventually Kevin Sullivan would take over. Savage gets the win by DQ, but it's because the Giant comes down and starts attacking him. Mark Starr tries to make the save. Alex Wright tries to make the save. Even Lex Luger gets involved. Nobody's a match for the Giant. We haven't exactly announced him yet, but clearly he's caught the eye of Kevin Sullivan, who's enamored with him, which makes us think, oh no, he's going to be in the damn Dungeon of Doom. But at this point, you're on commentary saying this man has now laid waste to Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage, and Lex Luger. You want to talk about debuting a new character as if the size wasn't enough. Boy, knocking down Hogan, Savage, and Lex. Man, that's how you get somebody debuted, right?
That was Hulk, man. Hulk had an idea. He was passionate about it. He saw Andre and Paul, and he wanted to make sure everybody else saw Andre and Paul. So the creative behind that and a lot of what Paul did afterwards for a long time was really not formally directed, but heavily influenced by Hulk for sure.
Our main event that night is Ming and Lex Luger. And Lex Luger, remind you now, he debuted at the very first Nitro, and that was a few weeks prior to this. So here we are at the end of the month, and he's wrestling Ming in the main event. Most people would assume they know what's going to happen, but of course, we've just seen Lex get waylaid here by the Giant. Ming actually beats Lex Luger in the television main event. So it's a big story. We're really building to Luger versus Savage next week on Nitro. We're also building towards the Halloween Havoc pay-per-view. But this is at a time where we have yet to really fall into, I guess, what we might call the Nitro formula. When do you think, if you had to look back with the benefit of hindsight and say, hey, that's kind of when it really all fell into place? Is it 96 once the NWO's here? Is it into 97? When did you feel like, okay, this is it? We figured it out.
I started feeling it. I started figuring it out in my head, or just getting a different feel for it, probably by early 96, late 95. It started to, it's like I started out, okay, there were certain things that I wanted certain boxes I wanted to check. Story, anticipation, reality, surprise, and action. Okay, we won't go through it again. Once I kind of found a rhythm in terms of that formula. Just watching the audience react over a couple of weeks and months, it started to give me the ability to even kind of fine tune just a little bit, turn up the volume on things that were obviously working more than I thought they might, turn down the volume on the things that I thought might work and that weren't really working quite as well, and just start fine tuning the show. By 96, I felt like we had a pretty good formula that I could actually write down and give to somebody so you could repeat it. Change it up a little bit, but you could repeat it. I didn't get that feeling or that level of confidence until probably really about February or March 96 is when it really started feeling good to me.
That was still, of course, in advance of when Scott Hall came down the steps and the NWO started to take form. But as a reminder, in late 95, this is when the WWF was starting to experiment with In Your House. Their very first In Your House in May did a 0.83 buy rate. They came back for In Your House in July to a smaller return, 0.7. And by the time we're back here in September, this does a 0.4 buy rate. And that's kind of a big deal because that is going to be the lead in to the first ever live Raw. So this is the first time that Nitro, the show we just ran through, would be head to head against a live Monday Night Raw. The first week you guys were head to head with a tape show was Luger and Hogan on Nitro, and you actually edge out Raw with a 2.5 and Raw got a 2.4. So the first time you go head to head with them, they have a tape show, you're live, you get the win, 2.5 to 2.4. We come back the second week and somehow, some way the WWF wins 2.7 for Raw, 1.9 for Nitro. But on week 3, you have those exact same ratings, but inversed. So now Nitro does a 2.7 and Monday Night Raw does a 1.9. But now that you're finally head to head, as we're talking, it was 30 years ago, the end of September, the last show of the month, they're live, you're live, and you beat them. And they're one night removed from a pay-per-view. Did that feel like something worth celebrating? Because, I mean, the night off after a pay-per-view feels like more people are going to want to tune in to see what happened, but you still beat them here. Was that?
Yeah, that was a pretty big night. That was worth celebrating. In fact, I may celebrate it again tonight because I forgot all about it, but yeah.
I do want to ask, I don't know that you had a ton of experience with him, but it is worth mentioning that this era of the WWF, they have a lot of influence from Bill Watts here. You had spent a little bit of time with him here in WCW. Did you have any concerns about his, I don't know, approach to wrestling and how it could affect what they were doing? Or did you not really think that Bill was going to last in the WWE?
I had zero. I looked under Bill Watts's creative hood, and there's nothing there that works in that day's environment. We're talking about late 90s.
Yeah,
Bill Watts, when he was functionally out of design by probably 1985. I mean, for a regional promoter in the South, great, he can make money, and I'm sure he did. But to play at a national level in prime time, Bill Watts was so just disconnected from the audience in television and what works and what doesn't work in television at that time. And I'd seen under the hood. I knew what he had. I was not worried about it at all. I didn't know whether he'd last or not. That's a different question. But as far as, was I afraid that Bill Watts was going to show up and make my job harder because he's such a creative powerhouse? No, that was the furthest thing from my mind.
SaveWithConrad.com.
My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California. I came to Save with Conrad because I've heard Conrad talk about how he helps people all the time save money and the best route to go for getting some mortgages and finances done. And having heard so many different testimonials in the past, it made the most sense to go this route. We were in the market for a new house and we wanted to know what we could afford. So we spoke with Steve and then Diane to get through the pre-approval process to see what we could afford. And then once we were able to understand that aspect of it, that was when we were able to shop around for a house to get a mortgage through Save with Conrad. Everybody on the team was great. Everybody really explained everything fully to where it was more in like layman's terms to where I could understand it as someone not in the business or having shopped around for houses too many times. So being able to understand every step of the process and talking with everyone on the team about that was really, really helpful. And it made me feel really confident that I was going the right route. I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. I know that sometimes people look at it and they go, oh, they're based in Alabama, what could they help me with? But I'm out here in California, and they were able to square everything away and get things done really quickly, as opposed to sometimes even people out here don't move as quickly as the Save with Conrad team. So everything was really well done, really efficient, and I would definitely recommend Save with Conrad to others. My name is Rajiv. I'm in Sacramento, California, and I was able to get into my dream home with SaveWithConrad.com.
That's number 212, non-equal housing lender. SaveWithConrad.com.